Good morning, everyone.
Hey there.
Morning, Jonathan. Morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Lord.
Morning, Lloyd. Morning, Shante. Morning, Drew. Morning, Melissa.
Good morning,
Morning, everyone.
everybody.
We just need a couple more and then we'll have a quorum.
Perfect. Thanks, Melissa. All right, we'll just give it another minute or two to let folks trickle in. Okay, so it is 10:05 a.m. We are still not at quorum, but I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order simply because we do need to have our meeting. And there is only one item on our agenda today that does require a vote, so we can move that later down the agenda when we do have a quorum. So welcome to everybody to the December Performance Management Subcommittee meeting. As always, we have a full agenda. The first thing that we need to talk about is the possible appointment of a new secretary. Shay Kennard, who has been our secretary, of course, has moved on to Hickory. And I wanted to ask if there was anybody who was interested in fulfilling that role for us.
I'd be willing if I could get the recording afterwards, just to be sure I'm capturing everything.
That can absolutely be arranged. If there is no interest from anyone else, you're appointed secretary.
Starting next time or this time?
So that is a position that requires immediate fulfillment. So starting in this moment would be perfect.
Okay. Gotcha.
Then yeah, I'll be sure to send you like the recording of this meeting and all of the stuff that you need, and then feel free to send me an email back if there's anything else that you would need that would be helpful with the minutes. Okay.
Awesome, Melissa. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will help you as well. I can certainly send you some of the past meetings minutes just to kind of give you an idea. We're moving more towards action oriented, so they don't have to be as detailed word for word. It's more about the important actions that were taken by the committee, in each meeting. So you'll have plenty of support.
Thanks.
All right. So we'll skip the next item, which is review of the COC evaluation tool, and we will go straight to the update on the cross COC Housing First evaluation process. And so Lloyd, if I turn that over to you to let us know where we're at and what needs to be done in anything at this point.
Very good. Thank you, Jonathan. Good morning again, committee members and staff. Things are falling into place, I believe, for the Housing First evaluation process across the 3 COCs of Wake, Orange, and Durham counties. I'm happy to report that it looks like Durham will be able to deploy 5 teams. We've got at least 1 team from each of the organizations that will be participating in the evaluation, from Urban Ministries, Housing for New Hope, and Alliance have each indicated that they will field 1 team. Housing for New Hope, as you may recall, has 3 different project types to evaluate. So we envision deploying 3 teams from neighboring COCs to evaluate those project types. So we need essentially 3 teams as well. But in addition to Housing for New Hope's team, we have several COC members and members of this committee that have indicated a willingness to participate. So I think we should be in good shape for fielding 5 teams of a minimum of 3 people. As you may have heard, also we are working with Whitney Patterson, who is compensated through APT Associates through a contract APT has with HUD to provide technical assistance to COCs. I'm not sure how many COCs Whitney is working with, but she is the technical consultant for both Durham and the Wake Raleigh COC, and she is helping us prepare training for the evaluation teams. We have scheduled 2 options for the training for January 3rd and January 5th. And she will be leading those trainings. At least one of them will be recorded so that people who cannot participate in one of those scheduled meetings can still access the training at a more convenient time. And we then will be over the next few weeks and into early January completing assignments of which teams are assigned to which organizations and which projects. I am noting and have noted to my colleagues in Wake and Orange that Danielle and Shante need to be assigned to a project in Orange County. So we'll be determining how that works out. We are, I think people on the committee may be familiar with the Housing First evaluation tool that HUD released several years ago that is serving as the framework for our evaluation. Myself, as well as Rachel Waltz from Orange County and Kim Crawford from Wake, have been working with Whitney to review that tool and try to streamline it into developing questions that the evaluators would be trained to ask in their on-site visits to the particular projects and organizations that they'll be assigned to. And that will be the biggest part, I believe, of the training that's being offered on January 3rd and 5th. That's what I know at this time, and certainly you're willing to entertain any questions. Again, the overall goal is that the evaluations, visits, and the work would be conducted after the training between January and the end of February 2023, with final reports perhaps coming to us at the COC and certainly shared with the members of this committee, but also shared with the projects and organizations. Any questions?
The floor is open for questions for Lloyd.
Hi there. Sorry, I was running a few minutes behind. Lloyd, you said that the teams have already been formed. I think I caught the tail end of what you were.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I was sharing that we do have enough volunteers for 5 teams from Durham, and we're planning to, assuming that you're interested. I know in the last couple of days, you and Malcolm, as well as Manuel Hyman, have indicated that you're all 3 associated with Alliance. I'm assuming that you want to work together as a team. I think that could be helpful. So that's our plan, that you would be a team. And we'd similarly keep together the teams from Urban Ministries and Housing for New Hope, and then other COC members who have indicated a willingness would be joined together in a team as well.
Hey, Lloyd, do you know offhand what the agencies for Wake are?
I'm not sure I've maintained a list of them. I know one or the other is affiliated with Wake County. Wake County apparently is actually a recipient of COC funds for these projects, but I've not kept an up-to-date list on that.
Okay, if needed, if you need additional persons to help with Wake, I will be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep that in mind. All right, so we feel good about where we are with that, and we'll continue to roll that out and hopefully have a good experience. I mean, I think it'll be a learning experience for obviously for the evaluators and for the organizations as well, and we'll have to see what kind of hopefully we can get some good input from project participants as well for the section of the evaluation that asks, our projects and administrators not only saying they do housing first, they not only have it in their policies and procedures or in their documents, but they're actually doing it. And to evaluate whether they're actually doing it, we intend to try to have some dialogue with project participants, either through perhaps a small focus group or perhaps some phone interviews or some kind of interviews with project participants. So, okay.
All right, any final comments or questions on this item? All right, thank you, Lloyd, for your update this morning, and thanks to the members of the committee and your colleagues who are going to be participating on these teams. It's really greatly appreciated. Well, we have now hit quorum, so we're going to jump back to the one item that requires a vote today, which is the approval of the COC evaluation tool. And members have been invited, of course, as you all know, to provide some feedback, and Lloyd has been incorporating that feedback into a new revision of the card. And so, Lloyd, would you like to say anything about the revisions that have been put in this time around?
Of course, I would. Let me share my screen and hopefully pull up the tool so that people can see the revision. Are you seeing my screen?
I sure do.
All right, so trusting everybody else can as well. Few comments. I very much appreciate the feedback I received. I think there was pretty unanimous consent to accept the revisions that were being made and suggested. I'm going to let's see. I think one of the big questions was around component 5, which was on what we should do about including housing first evaluation into the performance management or performance evaluation tool. Initially, we were thinking of trying perhaps incorporating some of the information that the cross COC evaluations would contribute. However, particularly insofar as this is the first year we're doing the housing first cross COC evaluation, and we may have significant some challenges with inter-rater reliability. That is to say that some teams may interpret and evaluate one project differently than another team might evaluate a similar kind of project for another organization. We decided to recommend not including the housing first evaluation results into the overall performance evaluation, but simply allow that evaluation to stand on its own, to allow projects to hopefully take to heart the suggestions and recommendations for improving housing first implementation. Not to say that it's not important, but that we would not use it in this more formal evaluation process. So there seemed to be that seemed to make sense to members of the committee. I did some minor revisions of the introductory page, trying to clarify some things, obviously removing the references to the component 5, etc., updating some of the question references, etc. scrolling down through the tool, much of what's under performance, actual performance, the first component is the same as what was in the 2022 tool, with the just with updating the years. I don't think we made any changes. There was, I think, consensus around continuing the questions around non-cash benefits, even as we added information under component 2 on at least for come back to that, come down to that for what percentage of people started with a non-cash benefit when they were entering the project. So that's component 1. Component 2 is probably an area where we made suggesting significant changes, really additions. And again, there appeared to be unanimity among the committee members who replied to the invitation to provide input to add a couple of things. One, question 11B would more specifically ask of permanent supportive housing projects, what percentage of the adult participants had a mental health disorder, an alcohol use disorder, or drug use disorder, or both alcohol and drug use disorder at project entry. This again would go a little deeper into the types of disabilities that adult participants in permanent supportive housing projects have, providing more specificity to question 11A. And the reason I've quoted from essentially the quotes here about those mental health disorders are you taking the language from the annual performance report table that that we would use to make those calculations. You can see that the kind of goal or benchmark for full credit would be that 75% of the people in a PSH project would have either a mental health or a substance use disorder of some kind. To balance that out, we're not suggesting evaluating rapid rehousing projects for the percentage of people with disorders, but question 11D would look at what percentage of people in a rapid rehousing project didn't have health insurance as starter project entry. So this would be another gauge of, again, the severity of need, or the assuming that people who do not have health insurance have a need for health insurance, the medical coverage of some kind, and that if they don't have it at project entry, would be an opportunity and certainly be important, hopefully, for the project to help people obtain health insurance. And so that's allows for that balance. Prior living situation has been measured in the past and has been one of the key areas. Another question that we added, again, with different goals for the benchmark of project performance, is question 14A and 14B concerning non-cash benefit sources. Would be evaluating again the percentage of adult participants in the project that entered without a non-cash benefit. So as I mentioned, I think to Jonathan in a email conversation in the last couple of days with him, the benchmarks that are suggested here are based on analysis of the averages for our for the rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing projects. For example, for rapid rehousing projects, I did a annual performance report for all of our projects, I think from January 1st, 2021 through November of 2022. So about a 23-month period. And during that period, we had 285 of 537 participants in our rapid rehousing projects, or 53% of them did not have health insurance at project entry. So, so with that being kind of the average across the board, the suggestion is that we have the benchmark for full credit being at 55%. Again, with the rounding to the nearest integer, it would be possible probably for somebody who only has 53% to nevertheless have their total score bounded up to the total of 5 points. But that would be the benchmark. I did consider, and I don't know if there's unanimity or if the committee wants to discuss it. We've added more points to component 2. I think as a result of that, where in the past we could double check if there's interest. The questions here are of all equal value, so that question 10, the percentage of people that of adult participants that had 0 income at entry is worth 5 points, which is, there could be some consideration that we should value that higher than perhaps the percentage of people that enter without non-cash benefits or without health insurance, for example. But if the committee wants to discuss that, we can. If the committee simply wants to take the recommendation to leave it as 5 points for this year and see how the scores come out, we can certainly do that, and the committee can consider changing any of these values in 2024. Similarly, we've had the component 3 on project efficiency being just essentially 2 questions looking at unit efficiency, looking at unit utilization, question 16, and reasonable project cost, question 17. But together, those 2 questions are worth 40 points, which is a significant amount of the overall points available. We did lower largely because all of our projects generally are getting 100% or nearly 100% of the points available for HMIS implementation. Would not what I want to say, we don't have COC approved benchmarks for data quality, although we will be working with Andrea and the HMIS Data Center at NCCH on a data quality improvement plan for Durham and data standards. But thinking that because our projects are performing quite well generally on these 4 questions, we are reducing the value. The overall value of the tool this year without component 5, taking that out, has changed the overall proportion of some of these of the 4 components slightly. You can see on this summary chart of the points received that overall performance under component 1 is still depending on whether you're looking at PSH or rapid rehousing, roughly 50%, well, more than 50% of each of those two, but is slightly a higher percentage for the rapid rehousing component, and then the component to serving high need populations, project efficiency, and HMS participation together worth 90 points together. So can't do my math real quick, but somewhere around 40% of the overall percentage points available. So that as an introduction, Jonathan, I'm happy to hopefully have, if there's a need, have further discussion with the committee about any of this, or perhaps the committee is ready to approve it as presented.
Okay. Thank you, Lloyd, and thank you to everybody for the feedback you've given us so far. Floor is now open again for questions and comments on this newest revised edition of the scorecard. Well, if there are no comments or questions, do we as a committee feel ready to adopt the scorecard as presented today?
I think so.
All right. Well, if there are no further comments or questions, I would invite a member to make a motion for adoption.
I move to adopt the scorecard as presented by Lloyd.
Okay. Drew Woden has made a motion to adopt the scorecard as presented. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Shantae Addison has seconded that motion. Any final discussion or concerns? All right, members, if you all will enter your vote into the chat box. So the options are yes to adopt, no, or abstain. All right, we have a unanimous vote to adopt the scorecard. Thank you again, everyone, for your input, and I'm definitely excited to put this into use in the new year when we start doing scoring again. So thank you to everybody for your thoughtful suggestions. Thank you to Lloyd for putting them into action and adjusting the revised card.
Thank you.
All right, on to our next item, which is a reporting update on the HSAC approved performance measures, which is back to you, Lloyd.
Sorry, just a point. I think Sally raised her hand.
Okay, Sally, I'm sorry, I didn't see your raised hand icon. Go ahead.
Oh, my video is working. Oh, there we go. Not working well. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make a general reflection on the scoring tool that was just approved. So as for those of you, like Shantae and Drew, mainly who participate in the by name list meetings, this idea of, are we helping the sort of most complex, hardest to serve clients with housing? And I know that Hanalea did a lot of work to look and see if there was any sort of racial biases in the system. And I believe, and Drew and Shante help me if I am sort of misremembering this, that one of the things that she looked at is that maybe, you know, sort of by relying on number of conditions, it was introducing some biases that she tried to correct by bringing in some other housing barriers to then utilize those in creating a system for complex patients. So, I mean, complex clients. So I, you know, completely understand that there's, you know, sort of like a purpose of the scoring tool. I just sort of want to reflect on the fact that really the, you know, community development is sort of, you know, establishing who gets admitted into the housing programs and are utilizing criteria that aren't always necessarily reflected in the scoring instrument just because of the need to, you know, sort of utilize what's available in HMIS. And so I don't know, maybe at some point the committee wants to sort of think about that in the future. That's my only comment. And I don't know, Drew or Shante, if you would sort of agree with that.
Yeah, I would echo that sentiment, Sally.
So I am not entirely clear exactly what the concern is. So is it by
Well, it's
looking?
not really a concern. I'm just sort of saying that on this scoring tool, one of the group of measures is about, are these projects admitting appropriately complex patients? Right? I mean, clients, sorry, work in the healthcare field. Okay, clients. And so the things that are being proposed are stuff in HMIS, like, do they have food stamps at entry? Do they have income at entry? Do they have, what are the number of conditions that somebody has at entry? And community development did some work around some of those measures and sort of decided that that what was being used to identify complex patients was sort of perhaps introducing some racial biases into the system, and created a housing barrier assessment to try to correct for some of those. And then that whole process is what drives who is admitted into housing programs. Right. So it's not like any of the agencies are selecting which clients come into our program. The system is selecting who comes into the program. And, you know, basically community development is selecting who comes into our programs and setting the criteria. And that criteria doesn't exactly match what is in the scoring tool, which again is fine because what's in the scoring tool is sort of what's available in HMIS. I just want to sort of reflect on that because community development put a lot of effort into that. And all of the agencies are sort of like bound by that criteria that is set by community development. Does that make sense?
Right. So I do.
But again, it's not a
that.
concern.
That's
I'm giving my comments after you all adopted the performance tool because I understand it's not going to affect the performance tool. I just think it's important to, you know, understand that, and yeah.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. I follow what you're saying. I do appreciate the you know the further explanation. Lloyd, I was going to say, as our staff member and community development and employee, do you want to respond and answer?
Yeah, I think it's a important discussion, and particularly insofar as we've strengthened the by name list processes over the last several years with the coordinated entry system. There have been discussions, I think, in and outside of this committee and at the COC lead agency about whether you know, component 2 should be included in the tool at all, particularly because of the concern that Sally raises, or the issue at least, that but the reason we have kept it in is because HUD is very clear in its notice of funding availability for COC funding that it does look at how communities consider or who they put into their COC funded projects. So HUD does want to see particularly permanent supportive housing projects, serve high need individuals and households. Obviously, permanent supportive housing projects, the households admitted into those need to have disabilities, and so I think it's trying to strike a balance, and there is a recognition of we could look at the differences, and maybe when we come to evaluating the projects, we can determine whether there are any significant differences in the scoring under component 2 that the projects receive. But it's trying to respond to the need to show HUD that we are evaluating how well our projects are admitting people with high needs into them, and I'm not sure we're doing much more than that. We're certainly not trying to influence how the referral process with the by name list process works.
I'm sorry, what was that last statement, Lloyd?
And I don't think the evaluation tool is trying to influence how.
No, I completely
projects-
understand. I think maybe we're not really understanding each other, because like I understand that this is not about, you want a tool to use because that's required, and that's fine, right? I'm not saying you need to revise the tool or do anything else, but it also seems, important to recognize two things. One is, it's fine and appropriate, again, to use the tool to evaluate projects as HUD wants based on their criteria around, their complexity. I'm not arguing with that, right? But, I guess two things. One is that community development sets the criteria, right? So we are, so I just want some acknowledgement that, that's what happens, and that community development has set criteria that's different from the performance tool. Again, I have no objections to the performance tool, but I guess I'm not understanding why that's can't be acknowledged.
I'm not sure what you're looking for us to acknowledge. The by name list process is coordinated through the department. It is up to this committee to approve an evaluation tool, and the committee is always free to accept or reject suggestions and or recommendations from staff or the community development department. So
Okay, it's fine,
I mean,
clear.
and yeah, and I mean, I think we had some discussion in between the November and December meeting. If committee members want to suggest improvements to the tool for future iterations of it, I mean, that we try to have a very open process. So if we can improve it either by deleting some aspects of some questions or adding others, I think we try to have an open process about that. Okay. Thanks for your
Okay.
comments, Sally.
So if there's nothing further on this, we can move on to the next item. Thank you, Sally, for your comments. I'm definitely curious to learn more. I don't participate in the by name decisions, so I appreciate you bringing that to my attention and into the committee's attention. All right, so moving on to the next item here, reporting update on HSAC approved performance measures.
All right, thank you. I think that's me again. You guys may feel I'm talking too much. Maybe I feel I'm talking too much. We have been waiting for input from the HMIS data center at NCCH to make sure we are communicating with the right people who are entering data into the HMIS, as well as the people who are leading our various projects that are subject to the performance reporting requirement related to the benchmarks. I would like to get some sense of the committee at this point. If we are able to get a communication out to our various street outreach, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, transitional housing, and permanent supportive housing projects, if we can get a communication to them about the required reporting and the reporting in the smart sheet by the end of this week. Is December 31st a reasonable timeline for expecting projects to submit the data into the smart sheet that our coordinator, Melissa Hernandez, has gratefully developed? Is that a reasonable timeline if we get something out by the end of this week, or should we consider setting, for example, January 15th as a reasonable timeline? And part of the goal here is to get performance data from the 5 project types and make that available to the Performance Management Committee in future meetings for the committee's consideration as to how well our projects individually are performing on the approved benchmarks.
Lord, this is Tracy. So we would, given Melissa's demonstration of the smart sheet from our last meeting, we would be following those instructions in order to capture the information from an APR or a report from the HMIS system to kind of enter this information into the smart sheet.
Correct.
Okay, and you're proposing either we get this by the end of this week or by January 15th?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we want to send something out sooner rather than later, and just particularly with the approaching holidays, we want to get a sense from the committee as to what would be a reasonable.
I would like to
deadline.
propose maybe later next week versus, you're saying by next Friday or next Thursday?
Well, I'm hoping to get something out by the end of this week. So by the end of the day tomorrow, that would communicate to the projects what our deadline is, as well as explaining the process and making sure. Particularly, we did have a training earlier. Melissa, may refresh my memory on when we held that. I think we held it before Thanksgiving. So that training video is available for people who did not attend the training. We had, I think, only about 10 or so people attend. So I'm concerned that there's going to be a fair number of people who are surprised that we're asking for this information. So we're going to need to do some work to apprise them of it and work with them to get it. particularly in
So
the new reporting process.
I'm just wondering, of course, I'm not with a project that inputs data. I'm wondering if maybe since it is already December 8th and it is a holiday month, if December 31st might be just a little too soon. But of course, other projects that represent our committee, you all know, how long it takes you to do data. Is December 31st reasonable, or does sometime in the mid-January date make more sense?
I'd prefer January. I know we're hitting up against the holidays and a tight turnaround time, but my preference would be in January, maybe the that first Monday of, the second Monday of January, a little before the 15th. We could possibly get that turned around.
Any other thoughts on that question? Drew, Sally, Shantae?
I would agree with January.
Okay. All right, we'll find a date in January, and that'll hopefully we'll be able to at least provide some information to the committee at the February meeting. That's what we have. All right, thank you for that input. I appreciate it. That's all I have on that item.
Okay. All right, thank you, Lloyd. So the last item was the COC reporting to HUD of assistance performance measures in the longitudinal system analysis data. This was a tentative item. I don't think Andrea is with us today on the meeting, so I don't think we'll be able to address that item today. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there any other business that the group needs to address this morning? If not, we can move to adjourn, and we'll meet again in the new year.
I move to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn by Drew Wotan. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, Tracy, we have a second from Tracy Stone-Dino. Thank you to everybody for your great hard work this year, for the work on the scorecard, for the comments. See you next week at the HSAC meeting, and have a great holiday season.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.